think it's a very sad day for Leeds. I think it's slightly sad for football.
This is an adventure, and I hope it can go a long way as an adventure.
We lived the dream. We enjoyed the dream.
I look on them all, every one of them in this club, as my own son.
We fully expected to win every tournament we played in.
Don Revie got us all together, and he had this sort of mentality, it's us against them.
We hated each other, and we hated them and they hated us.
What I liked about them was they were together. And if you hurt one of them, you hurt them all.
There was absolutely no question at all that Don Revie was trying to fix football matches.
You play the game and hopefully you play with honesty, and you don't like to think anything like that's going on.
Well, it makes you wonder where these things come from. Who invents them?
No period was ever so glorious in the checkered history of Leeds United as the early 1970s. A dressing room of household names lived like a family, bonded together by the manager Don Revie, whose approach was always pragmatic and usually
every one of them in this club as my own son. I'm not afraid to say that. I would do anything for them because they give you
Was done at Leeds. If you're going to do it, you try and
He's going to be in hospital, is he watching or what?
Yes, on the television. They're putting a television in his room, so they're watching from there.
Are you going to be very disappointed that he won't be on the field?
Oh yes, I'll be disappointed, but I mean, there's that many good players down there to take his place. He'll, you know, they're bound to do well.
Over 90 minutes with Leeds, I've got to give them fair credit to them. We hated each other. We hated them and they hated us. And we knew we were in for a battle. We knew they were going to come over the top, they're going to do you, they're going to kick you off the ball. And you know, when the referee's not looking at you, they moan, they whinge. And they do everything they try to win. They did everything. They got to the referee.
It was a good game. There was always a bit of feeling between Leeds and Chelsea because they were the so-called up and we were the team and they were the ones that were on the rise and everything.
A save towards Jack Charlton. Kick. No, it's a goal!
I remember the lad Houseman picked the ball up. We were 1 up and he was about 25 yards out on his left foot. And we kept saying to him, go on, shoot, shoot. And he had a shot, and really he mishit it, and it just straight through his fingers.
I don't think Gary could cope with the pressure. I mean, Gary was actually physically sick before every game we played nearly, whether it be an ordinary league game or it would be a FA Cup semi-final or a final. Gary would be physically sick in the dressing room before the game. I think he found it difficult to cope with that. But to me, he was a great goalkeeper.
There's a good run here by Giles as well. Got it in first time towards Clark. Against the post! How unlucky can you get? Jones! A goal! Nick Jones! 2-1!
We'd murdered them at Wembley in that horrible pitch that had been ruined by the show jumping. You know, they put the Horse of the Year show there, hadn't they, and ruined the pitch. But we murdered them, and you know, they twice escaped. 2 bad goals we give them. We went to Old Trafford, scored early, but they'd come out there. They knew they couldn't beat us. They come out there to have a kick at us, and that's just what they did.
There was some horrendous tackles, but it never seemed to. Everybody just got up and got on with it, didn't they? You know, there was Peter Osgood coming in, there's me, there's Billy, there's little Gilesy.
In the modern day rules, there would only been 2 players left on the park at the end of the game, and I think that says just how the game was in them days. They won the cup, and so you could say, well, you know, Leeds can't complain about that win against anybody because, you know, they like to mix it.
I've got to admit, they were a great side. I mean, I think I played all over the world. I was very lucky to play all over the world. And I've got to say that Leeds side was probably the best club side I ever played against, to be honest.
With the league title and the FA Cup beyond them, defeat in the European Cup semi-final by Celtic left Leeds with nothing to show for a season that had brought them so close so often. The following year, they hit the FA Cup trail full of optimism, all the more so when given a 5th-round trip to Colchester of Division 4. No problem, surely. Leeds were flying.
We had done with Billy big time, hadn't we? We had flew down, which is unheard of, down to Colchester. And we got there, and I can remember walking out on the pitch with Big Jack. And I looked up, and there was a wind blowing, the pitch was bumpy, and I thought, this is not going to be easy as this.
It was humiliation. I mean, for a team like us, I'm sure to the whole country at the time, because we were then hated, it was the greatest result that's ever happened.
Don walked out the dressing room, and then I spent the weekend wondering what was going to happen on the Monday. And on the Monday morning he had a meeting, and he came in and he took the blame. He said, I should not come in after a game and start shouting and telling you what you've been doing wrong. He said, we should come off the field, let everybody settle down, discuss it, which we will on a Monday now. We'll discuss the game on a Monday, get it out of our system and prepare for the next match the following Saturday.
What he used to do, it's quite funny when you look back. He used to say, chuntering and that, and then we'll go on one. And then he used to go to the mirror and he had his comb. He said, He used to comb his hair like that. Comb his hair and then, see you all on Monday.
I was just absolutely numb, and I think the boys were too, coming back from Colchester on the aeroplane. But this morning, we just said, well, let's get on with it. Let's work twice as hard and get on with trying to win the championship and the first cup.
But the climax to the title race hinged on a hugely controversial offside decision, or rather, the lack of one, when West Brom played at Elland Road. Jeff Astl's goal meant points dropped. Arsenal won the league by a single point.
He was offside. No matter what the FA said and what this referee came out, I forget his name, one of the top referees, and said he wasn't, but he was.
Today, that goal would stand because they would have been judged not interfering with play. But the way the rules were interpreted at that time, which was strictly if there weren't two players, including the goalkeeper, perhaps between you and the goal line, you were offside, then it was an extraordinary decision. I
was injured that day, actually, and we had a couple of big matches coming up, and I wasn't at the game. Donna told me to stay. I had to rest my leg. And I listened to the game, and they said there's been some trouble at Leeds, and it was about 15 minutes late finishing. Then when I saw in the evening what had happened, you know, with the double offside thing with Jeff Astle and Tony Brown, I couldn't believe it.
I thought it was a goal. You know, a lot of people disagreed with it, but I thought the goal should have been allowed to stand. I know. And even when I've seen it since, I've looked back at it a few times, I still think it was a goal. I know.
Domestically, 1971 was Arsenal's year, winners of the League and Cup double. But Leeds had made it through yet again to the final of the Fairs Cup, and having drawn the first leg 2-2 against Juventus in Turin, they were clear favourites to complete the job at Elland Road. Alan Clark's goal was just the prelude to some fairly brutal moments. A Juve team containing world-class performers like Bettiger and Causio, and also Fabio Capello, needed to score twice to deny Leeds the trophy. Their failure led to frustration and several flare-ups. Not that Don Reevy's men were too concerned, as they paraded the Fairs Cup, the last team to win it before it gave way to the UEFA Cup. Further vindication of Reevy's methods as the champagne flowed. March the 4th, 1972. Leeds United 7, Southampton 0. A scoreline that told only part of the story as Leeds passed their way into footballing folklore.
I remember stood there thinking, well, we'd gone about 15 passes. And I thought to myself, well, if this ball comes to me, I'm not going to be the one that gives it away.
To say to pass the ball around for a bit with it, really trying to score a goal. But one or two of the players just took the mickey a wee bit, Giles especially, I felt.
They were able to beat some teams almost without the other team getting a touch of the ball for half an hour at a time. But they were, as a consequence, going for all the trophies. And of course, in that period, you didn't have the squad system. You didn't have the concept of the substitutions.
Little Billy started flicking it here. Giles, you flicking it on. Do you know what? Now, you stood there and you're thinking, really, you shouldn't be doing this to fellow pros. And how those Southampton players allowed us to do that, I do not know. It was quite cruel at times. If I'd have been in the Southampton team or that Leeds team and people trying to do that to you, somebody had got sent off or somebody had done something to somebody who wouldn't allow you to do that.
Owen Hunter and Paul Madeley.
2 months later, Leeds reached their third FA Cup final. They'd lost the previous two, but in this, the centenary final against Arsenal, they finally got it right, thanks to Alan Sniffer Clark.
And McNabb only half stopping him. Jones getting it across. And Clark going in. And Alan Clark has put Leeds ahead.
FA Cup success at last, but that same Football Association insisted that Leeds must go straight from Wembley to fulfil their final league fixture at Wolves 2 days later. Not just any old game this, a point would be enough to secure the double.
After the game I was told my father took ill and they'd brought him into the tunnel, the Wembley tunnel where the dressing rooms are, and I went to see him and he was with my mother and he was sitting in a chair. And he looked all right. He just says he just felt a bit dizzy and that. And then obviously right after that game, Don decided he would whip us right up to Wolverhampton.
I think at the time, I think you thought whatever he says is law. You know, whatever he said we had to do, we did. I think that's where he probably made a mistake on that one. He should have allowed us to go and relax, because we never really enjoyed winning that FA Cup.
We were all experienced professionals who weren't going to get blotto, but maybe just to have been at the event and enjoyed what winning the cup was all about might have been a good thing.
We were tired that day when you think we'd just had an FA Cup end of the season, extremely hard, and then we had to play on the Monday, which was really diabolical when you think we could have played on a Wednesday.
Brian Clough's Derby had already finished their season and were 1 point clear, but Leeds' superior goal difference meant a draw would be enough. Frank Munro struck first for Wolves, reminding the visitors how tired both minds and limbs were, and when Derek Dugan made it 2-0, Leeds were on their knees. Somehow Billy Bremner found the energy to lead a comeback, but fatigue had taken a huge toll. Cup success had cost Leeds the league.
After I played in the game in the Monday night at Wolverhampton, which we lost and cost us the league, Don came to him and says to me my father was still in London. He'd had a bit of relapse, and I went down to London, and my mother was in London staying in a little hotel, and we went to the hospital the next day and they'd ran tests with my dad, and at first I thought he had this slight heart attack, but then they found out my dad had lung cancer and he died in September. So it's mixed emotions for me, the 72 Cup final. Right after the game you're delighted, and I heard my father was ill, you're a bit worried about that. And then after the game on the Monday, you know, when you travelled down you realised how serious it was. Puts the game into perspective though.
5 years later, by which time Don Revie had moved on to become the England manager, newspaper allegations, which were never pursued in a court of law, suggested that Revie had tried to fix the Wolves match and several other key games. Daily Mirror reporter Richard Stott broke the story after a chance remark by Alan Ball.
I went to Southampton, where Alan Ball was playing, and had a long lunch with him. And at the end of this very long lunch, he came out with this extraordinary story about Don Revie. And that was that he was then the sort of great young star of Blackpool and of the England World Cup team. And he was in dispute with Blackpool over his contract. And Revie told him to make as much trouble as he possibly could, and he would pay him £100 a week, and that eventually Blackpool would get so fed up with him that they would transfer him and he would come to Leeds.
I was aware of his interest. Don Revie himself never, ever paid me any money. Ever. But there was always somebody else who did.
This set us going on investigating Don Revie, because clearly it was an act of corruption by Revie and indeed by Alan Ball to take the money.
There'd be a knock on my door, and invariably there'd be a man in rain, sunshine, whatever, and you'd just say, there's an investment for Mr. Ball, which I took.
When I used to go away with Scotland and listen to players who'd been transferred from club to club, and I used to hear about them getting a few quid, you know, the backhanders and all that were going on. I think you had to be like that. I mean, I know, like Don would say to us if he fancied a player, or when you're in the dressing room or when you're training, if you have a word with, you know, whatever player, tell him I wouldn't mind signing him, and just see what his reaction is, and tell him what a good club Leeds is, you know, and they would do that. But it was going on all over. They were all doing it as well.
Goalkeeper Gary Sprake was paid £15,000 by the newspaper to tell his version of the story.
I went to see him and put the question that Reeve might have been trying to buy matches from opposing teams. And astonishingly, he admitted it there and then. But the problem with it was that we couldn't isolate the games. Of course, he knew about the Wolves game immediately after Leeds had won the Cup and were out to get the double. So we debriefed Gary Sprake as much as we possibly could and then got him under contract.
Well, it makes you wonder where these things come from, who invents them. I mean, we had just won the Cup on the Saturday and we went to Wolverhampton. I would have thought there would have been something amiss more if we had won.
Fleet Street is not a naive constituency. But it's impossible to think of anything in that game which would have suggested that was right. Now, if Wolves gave an honest performance, having decided not to take a bribe, it didn't look like that to me, because once that kind of thing is in the air at a match, and there's been a few dodgy games down the years, there's always a kind of atmosphere about it. Something's not quite right. You always sense that something's not quite right, no matter which way it goes. And I don't recall anyone having any suspicion at the time.
Gary and a lot of the boys grew up a long period of time together, and it distanced them for the rest of the players. And when we have any reunions now or any functions, Gary's never there, which is quite sad really, because Gary played a lot of games for the club.
After that article, I don't think anybody has any time for him, to be quite honest with you. Sad, but you know, we feel in him saying that he let us down as well, because it put a stigma over our whole 12, 15 years together where we'd been wonderfully successful. If I saw him, I'd say hello, Gary, but I wouldn't give him, you know, much time, in all honesty, because I do feel he let our side down.
Next week, what a save! And what an upset.
Give me the same ball, the same thing, I'd hit it just the same, and I know the other 999 times out of 1,000 it would have gone in.
And 44 days in the life of Brian, from titles to turmoil.
He sat us down and he just turned around and he said, "You see you lot that played under Revy, see all the caps and the medals that you won, you should find a dustbin and chuck them in there, because you cheated for those."